Hey guys, it's Media Matchups here, and today we are actually going to be doing a commenter's request for a versus match. The commenter King4D404 requested that I do a video between Jason Voorhees and Springtrap, so that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be putting Springtrap from the Five Nights at Freddy's series up against Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th series. Now, both of these characters have multiple different versions. As for Springtrap, then there's a version of him from the games, from the novels, from the movie, etc. And for Jason, he has like 7 different comic timelines, as well as several books and a bunch of other stuff. So I think it's important to establish what versions we're using here. I mean, sure, I could just composite them, but I mean, like, that's a lot of content to work through. So I'm just going to be using one particular version of each of them. For Springtrap, I'm going to be using Springtrap from the video games, so no feats from the novels or any feats from the movies will be included in this. We're also going to be using Springtrap at post-Springlock suit, but before he turns into Burntrap, so pretty much this is going to be Springtrap from Five Nights at Freddy's 3 all the way up to his death in FNAF 6. Now for Jason, I kind of had a lot of trouble choosing what version of him I wanted to use, as although there's a lot of different comic books, each of them are owned by like a separate company, and a lot of them also contradict the canon of the movies and contradict each other, and since they're owned by different companies, they're not legally allowed to be canon to each other. So I figured just picking one like company's comics to power scale could come off as just cherry picking. In order to avoid all of that, I'm just going to use what we know is 100% canon to the Friday the 13th timeline, and that is the Friday the 13th movies. So yeah, we're not going to be dealing with any of the novels or the comics or anything like that. We're just going to be looking at the movies. However, though, we will also be looking at the novelization of the movies, as those are technically canon. They're just the movies in book form and help out a little bit with power scaling. And we're also going to be using Zombie Jason, so this is Jason after his resurrection in Part 6 all the way up to his death in Part 10. And yes, Freddy vs. Jason is canon to the movies, so we are going to be including that. Anyways, so now that we finally have what versions of the characters we're going to be using, let's get into the power scaling of each of them.
Yeah, I killed those bastards, and I do it again, too.
William Afton was an incredibly skilled engineer and businessman. Working with his best friend Henry Emily, he opened up a restaurant known as Fredbear's Family Diner, and eventually opened up another one known as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. William Afton was mainly in charge of the robotics, making the animatronics and making sure that they all worked properly. Eventually, in a drunken rage, William Afton ended up killing a child because, you know, he was just feeling silly that day. This then causes a whole bunch of fucking butterfly effects that make him kill like 7,000 more children, and then he dies and then comes back and then dies again. Listen, just watch Brussels' FNAF video. He explains everything. I really don't want to give you a full recap of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore right now. Alright, so let's get into the power scaling of William Afton. So, as I discussed in my Mike Tyson vs. Five Nights at Freddy's video, William Afton can pretty easily rip apart the animatronics. Now, originally, I would just chalk this up to him scaling above the animatronic's durability, which we calculated in that video, but recently an actual calculation was made for the energy required to destroy the animatronics, and that calculation put it at about 800 joules on the low end to 1600 joules on the high end. And since William Afton can destroy them pretty easily, this would put him at about street level. Now granted, some counter-arguments are that William Afton would know weak spots, which makes perfect sense, but he would still have to deal around this much energy in order to rip them apart like he's seen doing in the minigames. As Springtrap, William would almost certainly upscale this, as he's likely gotten stronger since the Springlock incident due to his body fusing with the robotics inside of the suit. At most, I could see you arguing for William Afton scaling to about skull crushing, because other Springlock suits such as Fredbear have been capable of crushing skulls. Keep in mind though, it was the animatronic in that suit that crushed the skull, not just the suit itself. But on the absolute high end, you could argue for Springtrap scaling to skull crushing, which falls from about 3,000 to 3,200 joules of energy. But even if you don't want to scale him to that, at minimum he's stronger than he was when he was living, putting him at about 800 to 1,600 joules of energy for attack potency. His durability would roughly scale. I've heard some arguments for like small building level and stuff because he survived the collapse of Fredbear's Frights, but I mean, regular people can survive collapsed buildings, they just get stuck under rubble. So yeah, this isn't too impressive, and also surviving being set on fire is more so just impressive feat of resistance to fire manipulation, but not actually like a durability feat. I discussed this a bit more in my Mike Tyson vs. FNAF debunking video. If you want to go and watch that, I'll link it in the description if you want to go see that. Now, what William's more impressive stuff is his speed. As calculated on Versus Battles Wiki, Springtrap is capable of moving at around 18.1864 meters per second, which is about 40 miles per hour for those too afraid to use the metric system, which is crazy impressive as Usain Bolt only clocks in at about 28 miles per hour, so this is insanely impressive. For lifting strength, William Afton would scale above the animatronics, who can easily overpower likely fit individuals, as you need to be pretty physically fit to get a job as a security guard. And since Springtrap can pretty easily overpower the animatronics, who can pretty easily overpower them, you can make a good case for around above average human to athletic human lifting strength. Maybe you could argue peak human lifting strength, again due to skull crushing, but that's an absolute high end. He's more likely around above average human to athletic human for his lifting strength. Now, when it comes to some more impressive abilities that William Afton has, first off, William Afton is an undeniable genius. He's an absolute expert in robotics. He also learned how to control Remnant, which is like this soul juice, but he's learned how to straight up infuse it into animatronics, infuse it into machines that can infuse it into people. He also was like the first person ever to discover Remnant and figure out how it works. He also made the Funtime animatronics, which were stated to be like pretty much revolutionary in how advanced they were and some of the best animatronics of their time. And lastly, Springtrap has access to some pretty powerful abilities. Firstly, he's incredibly stealthy. He could pretty easily sneak up on the animatronics who can see in the dark, and he was able to dismantle them pretty sneakily. He's also got great social influencing, being able to talk several children into going into the back room with him, and has talked the police into not arresting him even though he was the main suspect of a murder case. As for one of William's more supernatural abilities, William can also possibly control the Phantom animatronics. It's implied that he can. The Phantom animatronics are hallucinations William can create that can jump scare opponents, causing them to kind of go blind temporarily, as well as cause them to have panic attacks and interrupt stuff such as their technology. William can pretty frequently spam these in order to completely overwhelm his opponents, as well as pretty much entirely cancel out their sight and just constantly make them panic. But I think what William Afton is most equated to is his immense resilience. Not only could he survive being spring-locked, which typically can kill a regular person by just crushing all of their internal organs, and this isn't a durability feat, his internal organs and shit got crushed. He just survived that shit for 30 years straight because he's just built different. He also survived the collapse of Fazbear Frights and only lost an arm, which proves a bit more resiliency. Dude could lose an arm without really being affected all that much. And it overall took burning him twice in order to finally kill him. The main reason why Springtrap is so resilient is because of Remnant. Other Remnant users, such as Michael Afton, could survive having all of their internal organs removed, which is pretty impressive. Williams also got some possible regen, as he was capable of recovering pretty well after the fire at Fazbear's Frights, and there's also statements that William's immense rage and hate is what makes him keep going, so you could argue supernatural willpower just through sheer hate and rage, which is pretty impressive. Lastly, Springtrap is like fully technically immortal because he technically has parasitic immortality, where pretty much if you die, your soul's going to possess something else. Now, sure, William can die, he has died in lore before, but he has circuit boards out there that have part of his consciousness up, which is why characters like Glitchtrap exist. That's just William Afton's consciousness put into a VR video game. So even if you kill his main body, there will still be code out there that he could theoretically put into another body. Also, his most powerful ability is that he's 6'11". I'm not even joking. There's been calculations of this. His height is 6'11". God, why did he ever get into robotics? Get this fucker into the NBA. Jesus. Now, for weaknesses, a big weakness that William Afton has is a lack of combat experience. The only characters he's ever really fought were like 7-year-olds, which obviously won't make for some great combat experience if all you do is just slaughter children. But he is still exceptionally intelligent and is still an exceptionally strong and dangerous fighter.
Well, I tell you, Tricia, as a local resident, I feel like I can once again take pride in my community. I think this is really going to revitalize tourism, and if you look around, I think even the wildlife is starting to come back, and...
Jason Voorhees was born to his mother Pamela Voorhees and his father, whose identity is unknown. Jason was born with a bad face disfigurement, which ended up causing him to be bullied for all of his life. One day, while he was staying at Camp Crystal Lake, he ended up getting bullied so bad by some of the kids that they just threw him into a lake, because kids are fucking evil, dude. Either way, they decided to just shove him into a lake, and because the camp counselors were too busy having sex, they didn't notice that Jason was drowning, and Jason proceeded to drown. Or did he? Yeah, no, it turns out Jason actually survived, kind of, in a way, somewhat. I don't know. But in one way or another, he ended up living, and ended up haunting Camp Crystal Lake, killing people who dared to enter the camp. Although, you know, he does make exceptions every once in a while. Eventually, after his death at the hands of Tommy Jarvis, an adult Tommy would eventually get paranoid that Jason's still alive, so he decided, you know what, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna stab Jason a few times with a spear, just gotta make sure. This was a bad idea, as lightning ended up hitting the spear, recharged Jason, and turned him into a zombie. Great going, Tommy, great going. So now to get into the power scaling side of things. So Jason, in terms of strength, should massively scale above his human self. He's described as far stronger than he was as a human, and plus, kid Tommy Jarvis could kill him when he was human, but adult Tommy Jarvis had immense trouble against him when he was not human. Jason Voorhees, when he was a human, could pretty easily break through a door just by walking into it, and he did this incredibly casually. Destroying a door like that would require, at minimum, 516,000 joules of energy, and Jason did this simply just by walking into it. And his zombie stealth should be substantially stronger. Zombie Jason is also crazy strong, being able to just casually rip humans apart, cut them apart, treat them like they're tissue paper, pretty much. As for durability, Jason should obviously scale to his own attack potency. He's not breaking his arms every time he punches, so he'd also scale to, at minimum, 516,000 joules as well, though it's likely far higher. In Freddy vs. Jason, Freddy Krueger dropped a massive boiler onto Jason. Now, according to the novelization of Freddy vs. Jason, this boiler weighed 10 imperial tons, or about 9,071.84 kilos. After going frame by frame in the movie, we find that it took around 3.125 seconds for the boiler to fall and hit Jason, meaning that by the end of that fall, the boiler was moving at a speed of about 30.646 meters per second. So throwing all this into a calculator for kinetic energy, we get that Jason was hit with about 4,260,000 joules of energy by this boiler, which would be wall level. Granted, this did happen in the dream world, and there are factors such as willpower and not being afraid of Freddy and stuff like that that can massively enhance people's strength, so it's entirely possible Jason survived this simply just due to sheer willpower and not due to durability, but he still could possibly scale this high. Jason has also survived getting shot, like a lot. He's also survived being set on fire, having a house collapse on him, being headbutted with a decapitated head, falling down some stairs. This dude's survived a lot of things. He's really damn difficult to put down, which is one of his main powers, but we'll get into that later. For lifting strength, Jason can pretty casually just rip off human limbs, such as arms, as well as human heads. Ripping off an arm takes about 3 metric tons of force, and ripping off a head is about 1.5 metric tons of force. So Jason's pretty consistently around 1.5 to 3 tons of force for his pulling strength. Now again, Jason did manage to tilt that giant boiler in the dream world, which as we discussed weighs 9,000 kilograms or about 9 tons, but again, that was also in the dream world where willpower can influence your strength, so again, that might just be a sign of Jason having some crazy ass willpower. Now for speed, and Jason kind of lacks in speed, we mostly just see him walk around everywhere. There are multiple instances of him easily killing people before they can react though, as well as moving out of the way of objects like cars and stuff, even when injured. So I think it's justifiable to say Jason Voorhees is somewhere in the athletic human to peak human range. There really isn't much proof of him being any higher than that though. Now for Jason's abilities. First of all, Jason's an absolute master of his machete. I mean, just look at that throw. Could you name anyone else that could do that? Didn't think so. Jason, as we also stated earlier, has immense resilience. This is mostly due to him being an undead zombie, but Jason has survived a shit ton of stuff. Broken necks, being stabbed in the heart, having his eyes gouged out, just being thrown around like fucking crazy. Guns, lots and lots and lots of guns. Just so much damage done to this guy, and he's just been able to tank it all without much difficulty at all. He's also got some immense pain resilience. Now there is some misconceptions that Jason can't feel pain, but he actually can. The novelizations confirm that Jason can feel pain. It's just that he's such a fucking Chad, he chooses to just ignore it, which is fucking awesome. He's also got a light healing factor as he's regenerated from having his eyes gouged out, having an axe in his head, etc, etc. He's healed from pretty much every injury he's ever gotten. Jason also has the power of resurrection. It's stated that Jason never really dies. Even when he dies, he doesn't really die. You know, you get what I mean, you know? Jason also has the ability to possess people. If completely killed and blown apart, he can make people want to eat his heart. How? I don't know, but he has some form of mind manipulation to make people want to eat his heart, and once somebody does, they get possessed. And from there, Jason is able to act using their body. However, though, that's all of Jason's, like, somewhat normal powers. He also has some pretty wacky ones. Like, firstly, it's stated he's not organic or inorganic, which I don't know how that works, but whatever. He also has some immense levels of senses. He seemingly just always knows where people are. He can just kind of sense how many people are in a given place and where those people are, so trying to hide from him is pretty much impossible. Jason can also smell sounds, which, like, how does that work? Like, does the sound waves vibrate his nose hairs and then he can hear through his nose? Or, like, do sounds actually, like, have smells? Like, how does that work? Sounds are like waves, so how does a wave have a smell? Is this a fictional world where sound isn't a wave and it actually has a smell? You just need a really strong nose? Like, huh? Jason also has enhanced enough senses to fight completely blind, and to just pretty easily track people. Jason's also got immense resistance to pretty much every form of dying. When the government got their hands on Jason, they attempted to kill him in every way they could think of. They tried poisoning him through lethal injection, they tried using the gas chamber, they tried the electric chair, hanging him. Nothing worked. Jason just overpowered all of it. Why? Because he's just that cool. Now, when it comes to weaknesses, Jason doesn't exactly have that many. He really only has two notable ones. His first one is that Jason isn't super smart, which I mean isn't really his fault. He never really got a formal academic education, but Jason has shown to have a very childlike mind. But Jason is a great tracker and really good at killing people, so I mean, he kind of makes up for it. And lastly, his second and arguably biggest weakness is mommy issues. Alright, so now that we kind of laid out both of these characters and kind of discussed their strengths and weaknesses, who's winning this? Well, if you were paying any fucking attention at all, okay, that was a bit aggressive, sorry. But, yeah. But I mean, all you have to do is just look at these numbers and, yeah, you can kind of see a pretty clear winner here. Now, to be fair to Springtrap, it isn't a complete wash for him. Springtrap is a lot faster than Jason Voorhees, so he's gonna be difficult to hit. Jason's definitely gonna have a hard time, like, actually swinging and cutting him apart. Secondly, William Afton's ability to control phantoms could definitely throw Jason Voorhees off. Constantly having phantom animatronics jump scaring him, although probably wouldn't put Jason Voorhees into a panic attack like it does with regular people, it will certainly distract Jason and make this fight even more difficult for him and allow William to get in some opportunity attacks. Also, William Afton's immense resilience will make him really difficult to kill for Jason. However, I really doubt any of this is going to matter. Jason just has enough strength to completely just slaughter Springtrap in this. He has way higher lifting strength, he has way better attack potency, his durability will allow him to tank anything William throws at him. Even using William's higher end of skull crushing, all he's gonna do is just a little bit of chip damage to Jason. He's really not going to be able to do that much to Jason, though. He's just going to be very, very, very slowly chipping away at his durability, and that's about it. And even if Springtrap could harm Jason, Jason's immense resilience due to being a zombie is going to make it pretty much impossible to, like, actually kill him. And even if he could get past that resilience, well, we still have Jason's regeneration to deal with. And even if he got past all of that, he would still likely not be able to resist eating Jason's heart, allowing Jason to just possess Springtrap. And while yeah, Springtrap's resilience will again help, it doesn't help that Jason has far better resilience and a far better healing factor than William Afton does. William's best bet in this fight is to use the Phantom Animatronics to try and overwhelm Jason Voorhees, and then try and use his superior speed to very slowly chip away at Jason's durability until eventually Jason dies. But keep in mind, this speed difference isn't that much. It's not like William will just be able to completely speed blitz him here. It's only 40 miles per hour. Jason's inevitably going to catch William before William can kill Jason. And the second Jason gets his hands on William, well, William's fucked. So unfortunately, Springtrap just doesn't stand much of a chance here. Jason's just far better physicality with his strength and durability, as well as having far better abilities that can counteract many of William's abilities, such as enhanced senses counteracting William's stealth, makes me believe that Jason's winning this pretty much every time. I don't really see a reality where William ends up winning this. So yeah, that's ultimately my verdict. I think Jason Voorhees would pretty easily defeat Springtrap. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think I was correct and agree and think that Jason Voorhees stomps Springtrap? Or do you guys disagree and think that I didn't give enough credit to Springtrap and that he should have won this? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.